Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. Let's give everyone a moment to log into the webinar and then we'll get started. As a reminder, we will run a poll throughout the webinar. You may participate if you'd like. We thought you may appreciate learning more about your fellow attendees' needs or challenges in their cloud journey. This poll will be updated live during the webinar so you can see where you stand among your other attendees and their responses. All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We will explore conquering the cloud and cloud costs with ease. My name is Scott LaFortune. I'm the Digital Marketing Manager at SystemSoft Technologies. On behalf of our teams at SystemSoft, Flexera, Synex, and our speakers, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. If you find yourself squinting at the screen, struggling to see a small presentation, I've got good news for you. You can enlarge the webinar window on the screen by clicking on the settings below. Feel free to take a moment now to adjust your screen so you can best see it. As I mentioned earlier, we'll run a poll to determine the top priority for your organization's cloud initiatives. We hope you'll consider participating. It's just a fun way to see where you may be in your cloud cost savings journey as compared to other webinar attendees. It also helps presenters tailor the information they're sharing with you so they can better address what you're looking to get out of this webinar. Lastly, we're reserving time for question and answer session at the end of the webinar. You may submit questions at any time by posting them using the small window below. Today's webinar agenda focuses on using Flexera to control cloud consumption and costs. Our speakers will discuss the current challenges facing organizations as they deploy and expand into the cloud and how to solve some of those issues. We believe there are significant benefits such as cost savings and better cloud governance you may be missing out on without the right technologies in place. At the end of the webinar, we'll reserve time to answer questions you may have about the information presented today or even on topics related to the webinar that we didn't cover. As you can see from our agenda slide, we have three speakers with us. Mr. Don Bilberry, SystemSoft Technologies Senior Cloud Architect, Mr. Alan Legerlotz, Flexera Solution Engineering Manager, and David Bloom, Microsoft Cloud Sales Engineer, who is joining us from Synex. Don, I'm going to hand it over to you. Could you please give us a quick introduction and then dive into the presentation?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. As Scott mentioned, my name is Don Bilberry. I'm the Senior Solution Cloud Architect here at SystemSoft. And during the course of my career in the cloud, one of the things that regularly comes up is, we just don't know how to figure out where the spend is going in the cloud. The cloud is great at being able to deploy fast and get your ideas to the market fast, but what is really not very obvious within the cloud is where the money is being spent. And in a poll done by Flexera, they determined that at least almost all of their respondents believe they had at least 30% of estimated spend that was wasted. And as a matter of fact, in another poll that they had done, two of the three top issues that, or at least top priorities, cloud initiatives, were around cost savings in the cloud. Either optimizing the existing use of the cloud or better financial reporting of cloud costs, because they're just so murky and it's hard to understand where all that cost is going. And I would even argue the second one is probably a mix of that as well, because many folks believe migrating workloads to the cloud is a way to save money too. They just don't understand if they're really truly saving money or if they could actually eke some more savings out of that. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And so how do you get a grip on really understanding what the costs are in the cloud and how, more importantly, to massage those cost savings out of the cloud itself. And for that, you really need an effective cloud cost management platform. And it needs to really hit on finance, optimization, and visibility. And so for these things to work, you need to understand where is the cloud cost going. And you have to have billing centers set up for that to really do the show back to the engineers. And I'll explain why a little bit later. As far as the budgeting, there needs to be alertings that goes out to alert folks when they're getting ready to go out of budget, especially early in the billing cycle. All too often, you get a bill at the end of the month and you're 20% over budget. And that's not a good place to be as an IT professional, right? You really want to be able to understand what you're spending in the cloud ahead of time, so that number one, you could report that out early. And sometimes more spend in the cloud isn't necessarily a bad thing. It could be that you're just being more successful with your product. But warning folks ahead of time really lets people know that you have an idea of what's going on, as opposed to it's a surprise and no, I really don't know what's going on. I don't know why we're 20% over budget is always a bad place to be with your management. Also, having the ability to make recommendations in governments, and this could be for compliance reasons, this could be for tagging purposes, security, compliance, etc. Cost optimization, needs to be enrolled into that to an effective cost management platform. The ability to generate accurate reporting that is trustworthy for your managers, so that they know that you're not just kind of guessing. And then the ability to have cross-platform, cloud-agnostic visibility as well. Not everybody is multi-cloud, but many are, right? So if you are in AWS and if you're in Azure and in Google, the ability to see all this from one dashboard can be very, very helpful, as opposed to using the separate tools. And most importantly, reduce cloud sprawl, right? Understand where those wasted resources are. It's well known that when you delete a resource in AWS, Azure, or Google, storage doesn't just automatically get deleted. You have to go back and delete that. And then sometimes that gets lost. And, it may not be a lot of, waste at first, but it does add up. And so how does Flexera, address that? Well, here are the key components, and it really adds up to a complete cloud platform solution. And it starts with the billing centers, where you set up your billing centers so that you can at least show back, if not buy back. Tabular views allows you to see what you're spending on in each resource at a very granular level. The common bill ingestion is what allows you to bring in data from all the different cloud vendors. And that's built into the dashboards, where you can actually see the reporting. And then last but not least, but probably most importantly, is the automation and policies that are built, right, in order for you to do automated tasks like check for untagged resources, or go in and send reports out to the different billing groups, or look for unallocated resources, or maybe even right size VMs for you, or make suggestions on what should be a reserved instance. So some of you are probably thinking, that's great. I want to know why would I use Flexera, say, over the cost optimization tool within AWS or Azure? And there's a few really good incentives for that. One of the major ones is the full multi-cloud support. In other words, if you're in multiple clouds, you're able to adjust all that data into one source. Also, with the platform extensibility, that really allows you to ingest this data any way you want through the use of APIs. And if you have a reporting tool like ServiceNow that uses API ingestion, you can get alerts that send that out to you through that extensibility. Also, the proactive and reactive compliance automation. And that's where it can, within minutes, tell you, yes, I have an untagged resource. Even if you tag your resources when you create a resource within Azure, it doesn't necessarily go in and tag all of the child resources it makes for that resource. And so I find when I go in and I tag, say, a VM for whatever specific purpose, I'll go back in later and the network isn't tagged, or et cetera, et cetera. And so I have to go back in there and find those. Well, instead of waiting a full month to find out I didn't tag these, I can now be alerted within 15 minutes that those resources are tagged and fix that. And then some of you might be thinking, well, that's great, but we're thinking about doing our own tooling to do that with Chef or Puppet. And that's an option too. However, the advantage of using Flexera over those are, there is a huge knowledge base and influence, because Flexera team is, hundreds of folks working on this product, as opposed to you might have a couple of guys working on it, or maybe even 10 if you're a larger company. But they have a lot more experience with it. They've been doing it for a while, and they understand what the bigger issues are. Also, they have analyst recommendations. they've already been there, as I said, they've been doing it. They know what to look for, what the pitfalls are, and they can help you find those things and put in the right policies in place immediately. Ongoing support and maintenance is a huge issue, right? They're constantly refining their product, and time to value, which is huge because, even if you decide to roll your own, even if you had a crack team, conservatively it would be 90 days from, start to finish. And then you got to have to do the ongoing support and maintenance of that product itself. The automation is built right in Flexera, which is huge. And you have platform extendability, right? Again, the APIs, which will ingest that into, ServiceNow, et cetera. So all of that rolled in together makes this a very, 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 very compelling product for you to use for governance. So let's go ahead and go into the poll question. And Scott, do you want to go ahead and go over that?
Sure. Thanks, Don. As of right now, it looks like control over compliance and ensure security are tied at 40% of the votes and automation at 20% of the votes. We'll leave it up for a little bit longer and let you guys finish voting throughout the rest of the webinar. And then, Don, you can address the final verdict towards the end.
Okay, sounds good. So while you guys are doing that, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the case studies that we've done. This is just a general kind of poll that Flexera put out to their customer base, and what they found when they actually started using the product, as to what they found as far as the percentage of decrease. So as you can see with manufacturing, the percentage of waste was 25, and then after 7 months, they were able to realize another 17%. Global industrial, again, you see there, but at the end, all this averaged out to about 35% of waste that was just being spent on things that just weren't necessary, right? And so that's pretty alarming. When you think about 39% of 300K, that's almost 140K per month that was being wasted in the cloud. And so there are some companies that have been worked with in the past, one of them being Assurant. And they realized within the first 6 weeks that led to 400K per year of savings. And their situation was much like all of the rest of the companies we speak to, right? They realized that the cloud spend was growing out of control, and they just really didn't have any way to go in and understand where the costs were going, how to really rein that in with automated governance. And so they worked with they really use the cloud cost optimization tools to allocate cost and hold the engineering team's accounting. What they really did was they set up billings tools that would directly make those folks responsible for their own cloud spend. And I always use the example of, if you went to a car rental place and you had no restriction on what you could order, and you had a Ford Fiesta and a high-end Lamborghini sitting there, you probably choose the Lamborghini, although there's no real need to, right? The Ford Fiesta would get you there just fine. But if that's why we put things in place like Concur, right, where it says you can only spend, we'll call it $50 a day on a rental car, as opposed to the $400 that the Lamborghini cost you, right? So that's where this really rolled into place, and that helped them to really rein in the control. And they realized, like I said, $400,000 of cost savings in the first year just by putting in place some of these guardrails. And the same story with Kellogg's, right? It was a little bit different with them, but for the most part, it's the same story, right? They had a growing AWS cloud environment. Everything was just kind of willy-nilly as far as, hey, we need to just ingest the cloud. Cloud's good. But they didn't really understand, where the costs were going. And, working with some of the analysts, they were able to put in some policies that really helped them to rein in the costs. And a lot of it was done by reserved instance purchases. But some of those other cost optimizations were put in place as far as the policies that we'll show you a little bit later as well. And so the outcome was they saved more than 700K in the first year. So in the first 5 months, actually. So you can see where that is huge. So let's go ahead and show you the actual tool, and I'll go ahead and go into the Optima tool that we use. And so here you can see a view of the dashboard, which is the first thing you see when you come into Flexera. And I haven't done a lot with AWS yet, and that's why you see a lot of this unallocated. As I add in those AWS tags, this will all go away. Ideally, you see nothing as far as what the unallocated is, and you see everything kind of as a category unto itself on what your spend is. But as you can see here, you can actually look at what your cloud spend is per day, and you'll understand what it is you're being spent on. And there's different views you can look at. I can do it by billing center, cloud vendor, bill entity. The options are quite robust as far as what I can drill that down into. And you can see a daily chart here, so you can see if you have spikes or something out of the ordinary that comes around, and your cloud spend breakdown, etc. Who's spending what by the person's name. And again, we have a lot of unallocated, but that's easy to fix. There are some other options over here. For instance, if I go over here, I can go into the governance portions, which we'll go over later. When I go into the billing, this is where I set up my billing center so that I can show showback. As you can see, I've set up several already. One of them is for my Kumina project. I've got a Boomi testing, compliance, Dynamics 365, Kubernetes, microservices, production Boomi, and this was a demo that we were running that we no longer run, which is why it shows 0. And we're showing it for the, basically by this timeline for October. You can go back to September or even back, back historically. As long as you've installed the product, you can show, those information as well. And as you can see, I can drill down into a specific product and understand where my costs are going for that particular product. This one being a Kumina or a Kumina installation that we have on Azure. And we can take it down by service. We can do all kinds of things by instance type, et cetera, region. So it's very robust on what we can do. And it's really nice because then I can send a report over to my, business owner, who happens to be Whitney, and say, look, this is what we're spending. And if we start to see a spike come up and we're not expecting it, I can say, hey, Whitney, your storage costs are going out of control. What's going on? And then she can take a look at it and go, oh, that was expected or not. As a matter of fact, we can actually set up a report that'll send it over to her automatically. So I don't have to go in here and do this. And we can also set up rules, for instance, in ServiceNow or Jira that, basically will pick those up as a ticket and automatically send those over to Whitney as well. Now, so we can also do a tabular view and see, where are we spending the most by service, for instance, and even export this into a spreadsheet. And it'll give us recommendations, if there are any, on what can we do to basically help out. And this one's running fairly well, so you see there's really not a lot of recommendations. There's no VMs running; it's all services, and everything seems to be running fairly well. So there's no cost recommendations here, but often we'll see like, hey, it's the wrong instance type. You can save money by switching to a different instance type, or etc. And then we can see with this view, if there was any, what users are most commonly, attaching to it. So that's the billing portion. And how we set these up is we actually go into and create rules, right? And as you can see here, this is how I set them up. And if all I need to do is create a new, tag, and I put in a key value for it. So for instance, my Kumina was business unit equals a Kumina. And that's how I put that in there and create a new billing center. And then those will populate within 24 hours. And so that's the billing. Now there is a reserved instance. I don't have reserved instances in there. As a matter of fact, if you look at my whole cloud environment, I don't even have a single VM. I'm only running services. But if you had reserved instances, that's where these would populate here, and you could see, are you really using those efficiently? With reserved instances, it's best if they run 24/7. In other words, the services run 24/7. So if you're getting 50% utilization in a reserved instance, it's probably an indicator that you need to stop running a reserved instance on that particular application. So that's the quick and easy look at the billing. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to David to bring you through the governance portion.
Great, thanks, Don. Let me get my screen shared here. And there we go. Well, thank you, everybody. This is David Bloom. I'm one of the Microsoft Cloud sales engineers and the Flexera SME at TD SYNNEX, and we're SystemSoft's distribution partner. Work very closely with them. Now, today we've been talking about governance in general, the governance of your digital estate. In this particular case, I want to talk about a module that we call governance. It's a component of Flexera. And what this module allows me to do is to automate the governance of the environment. And this will increase my agility and efficiency, but also help me increase the security and reduce risk associated with the cloud environment. We're talking about automation. It's all about giving you more time back in your day so you're not watching reports constantly, letting us alert you when you should be going in and looking at those reports. So in this solution, Flexera has developed already over 140 different policies, or you could consider them computer programs, that can be applied to your environment. And what these policies do is they watch the environment and will alert you of any concern or anomaly that they happen to run across based on parameters that you have specified. What they really are doing is they're taking advantage of the APIs that exist from the manufacturers. So that's from Microsoft or from AWS, and placing a shell around them, hiding the complexity for you of implementing API calls directly. It's a matter of going in, we're going to look at this in a second, and just applying some parameters and say run, and it'll take care of it for you. So again, we've let them take that complexity. But in addition to those 140 policies that they've already created for us, we can create our own. The way we do that is through a language that they have extensively documented. The developer guide that they provide to us goes in great detail, providing everything we need to know to develop our own policies. And I've had many developers on calls such as this who we've looked at these policies and the code behind it, and pretty much across the board, they say that's pretty straightforward. We could develop those on our own. So it's not a hard thing to do if you wanted to create one. What Flexera has done for us is they've created policies that kind of hit the goals of most companies. But it's just every company's different. They've given us that ability to add our own or make changes to them. An example that I brought up, a couple of my favorite policies is I always implement just about on every instance that I create, unattached volumes and unattached IP addresses. And what we mean by unattached volumes is hard disks, like Don said, which deleted a virtual machine, but they've got to delete the hard disk. So we're paying for this disk that's sitting out there not doing anything. If I took a look at this, you'll see that the code is available to me. This is the actual code that's going to run on the back side. One thing I do like about Flexera is they don't hide anything. They tell us everything about the solution. And as you can see up here, there's a README, and that will take us out to GitHub, and we can view all the information, and they'll tell us all about any issues, things that we have to watch out for with this, things that won't do and things that will do. There's nothing hidden in this solution. And like I said, we can look at the code. And this is the actual code that's running. What I find most partners are doing, or most customers are doing, is when they want to get into this modifying of or creating their own policies, what they'll usually do is start by modifying ones that already exist. It's very simple. It's a text document. I just download the existing code, and then I can bring it into just any text editor and edit it. What people do things like parameters. So this particular code or policy has a parameter that says, how do I know that this hard disk is been unattached? It's something that I'm concerned of. Well, there's a parameter that says that. So this is how many days since that particular hard disk was last used, can I then determine that it is something to be of concern. And you can see there's a default value. So what a lot of people will do is I'll download that one, and I actually did that in my own environment here. made that modification, and we can re-upload it to, and for some reason it's not showing up. Let's see if I still have that policy. I do. So let me just re-upload that policy. For whatever reason, it has disappeared on me. We can do that very simply. Just drag and drop it in here. And when it comes up, you'll see what I've done is I've just simply gone in and I made a change to that particular policy and said I want that default value to be 60 days. But you see what else I did is I said that I want the minimum value to be 30. So by default, it will let me go down to 0. Maybe you want to restrict what your users can do in any of these particular policies. And you don't want somebody setting it up to 5 days. You know that you want something over 30. And what this allows me to do is when I go to apply this policy, down here I have the ability to make a change to that parameter. And if I do change it to an unallowed volume or unallowed value, it's going to warn me that I can't go less than 30. And you saw the value of 60. So we can make those simple changes. Again, we could write our own from scratch and create our own version. Now, the nice thing about these policies is they can also affect the environment. And that's something you can do if you wish. Or you can do it manually. And a lot of times there are things that we can automate, again, making our lives easier. In this particular case, it may be if I do find this volume that hasn't been attached for 30 days, I may want to take action against it and I may want to delete that volume because I know that any volume that hasn't been used in that period of time, I can get rid of. So we can take that action automatically. I could just leave it, have it raise an incident. And when I raise an incident, it goes into this section over here called incidents. I can view them there. But what I find most people do is they want to take it and actually email it to themselves. We don't want to have to come in here constantly and look for incidents. So you can send me that message. And usually what people do is send it to a group or a ticketing system to let people action it. Of course, Flexera has also created an API to this. So if you do have some system that you would like to attach to it, you can actually manage this complete environment from your own system by using their APIs. So what would happen is when I do run this one, if it did find these unattached volumes, it would, in this case, would delete it is what I told it to do. It can even make a snapshot in case I wanted to give myself a little backup. But we do find sometimes that people will have things, you want to run the unattached volume, but you do have that one hard disk out there that you don't want to delete. It sits out there for a given reason. I usually use the example of maybe the accounting department has a hard disk that they use once a year just for tax time. They don't want to pay for a virtual machine, so they leave it out there. Of course, I don't want to be constantly alerted that that hard disk is sitting out there, and I definitely don't want to delete it. So we have the ability to exclude items, so we can actually even exclude them from these policies ourselves. So if I jump back to the catalog, we've divided these policies into basically 4 major categories. I find that sometimes you will see that they kind of cross categories too. What we call cost kind of may be compliance, kind of may be security. So they kind of go across them. But there's a lot of different ones we can use. And I just want to point out a few in each section. Ones that I tend to find people really have a lot of value for. Within cost is where we do have some of those automated reports. Everything Don showed you already, we can actually email that to you. So you don't have to come into the tool until you want to get into that more granular detail. So there's a lot of different reports. We can just do those standard, here's what your spends are. We can do reports around the budgets. Where do we expect your budget to end? Do we expect you to overrun it at some time in the future? Lots of reporting capabilities. And I'm going to scroll through a little bit in each section as I talk so you can kind of get a flavor for the different policies we have. We obviously have those unused items like I just showed you for unused volumes and unused IP addresses. Why pay for something that I don't use? We can get rid of those. We have things, one I like is around storage and lifecycle management. If you're really familiar with storage in Azure, we have the ability to automatically move resources or documents or whatever I have to be storing from more expensive to less expensive storage automatically. Well, we can report on that. We can let you know that you have documents that may be able to be moved and even do that for you. Again, we can automate a lot of that move. We can look at your regions. We can say you have resources in the East US, and if you move it to East US too, perhaps that would be a better move to save you some money. Around reserved instances, it's a huge one. That's one that pretty much everybody uses. We can tell you that, are you utilizing it? We want to see 100% utilization on reserved instances. Why pay for something I'm not using? But when are they going to expire? Because we do want to renew them. If we're saving money, we want to renew them before they expire. We don't want to jump that cost. Even recommend to you that we think this virtual machine should get a virtual machine. And then we have lots of things around right-sizing databases, right-sizing virtual machines. I might have a database that I put in too large of a server because I felt that that's what I needed when I first deployed it. But we can alert you to that. And since these environments are constantly changing, we don't just need to run this one time. Allow the tool to run consistently, and it will tell you over time when changes may be needed or may be of value to you. If I go back up to the top, I can reselect. I selected just the cost section, and I'm going to jump down and select security and bring up just the security policy. So this is not just about cost. It's not just about how much am I spending, but it's also about what can I do to keep myself more secure, because we can do things without expecting it to cause our environment to be a little bit less secure. A couple of them that we use that I think are very important is when I have a storage account and I'm not requiring encryption, I'm not requiring HTTPS to access it, or is it even accessible to the internet? Sometimes we have storage accounts that we really have no reason to be accessed by the internet, or maybe somebody flipped a switch and we want to make that change. Are ports open, are IP ports open to the internet that shouldn't be? Or do we have a database that's accessible to the internet? All those types of things can happen accidentally, not maliciously, but we want to address those. So even if they happened 6 months from now, we can report on that and let you know. If I jump over to operational, this is my day-to-day things. Again, things that I don't necessarily want to spend my time looking for. Do I have stranded servers? Do I have servers that are booting up? Because we do like to shut down in the cloud a lot, shut machines down when we're not using them. Do I have machines that are booting that hung? We call them stranded servers, and they didn't successfully boot. I'd like to know that as fast as possible, especially if maybe I'm booting stuff up in the morning for people to use during the day. I'd like to know that they were stranded. Or do I have virtual machines, for example, that are not using managed disks? Managed disks have many benefits, from scaling to resiliency, really just much simpler to use. And maybe somebody created a virtual machine using old technology. Since we create machines a lot on the fly, we can let people know that those were done, that they need to be fixed. And then another area is compliance. So this is that area of, am I meeting the requirements of my company? Is my company set up certain requirements, such as tagging? Tagging, you'll hear, if you talk to any of us in the cost management world, tagging will be that common word we use 1,000 times a day. An untagged resource is a resource I can't report on. I don't know who's going to spend it. So it'd be nice when somebody creates a resource that we immediately let you know, as Don said, that this wasn't tagged and we need to tag it. But we also have things like subscription access. Who has access to a subscription? I also do a lot of discussions around security and how my company maintains security of our infrastructure. And a lot of it is around access. I don't want people having these high-level access that don't need it. And then there's a whole bunch in the compliance area about what regions or what types of resources people are deploying. Regions are important, especially if you have data sovereignty requirements. Do you have to keep it in the US or outside the US, depending on where you may be? So we can let you know when somebody maybe accidentally created something in the wrong region. Of course, it could be something as simple as somebody doing it on the West Coast. And then we kind of have our data farther away, and it's going to cause latency. Unapproved resource or instance types is really a big one for me, because I had a customer once tell me they accidentally created a very expensive virtual machine. And thankfully, they had set up the unapproved instance policy within Flexera, and it alerted them before they got this huge bill and had to go back to their management and ask for a little bit higher budget for that month, because they were going to run well over budget. These policies, we can apply them multiple times using different parameters. It's not a one-time thing. I don't have to just set up for example, untagged resources here. One time I may set one up with one set of parameters, another one with another set of parameters for different reasons, and different accounts and different tagging schemes. We just we build them as we need. And this really comes in important when we are talking about reports, because I may want to do different reports with different parameters, looking at different things. Maybe it's looking for different departments. I want to send reports to 2 or 3 different people. So like I said, when we apply these policies, they start running immediately. They run in the background. They'll just run on that regular basis. You can set the frequency. We can set them as small as 15 minutes, and I think we can run as much as monthly. I think there may even be an annual. And when it runs, like I said, it raises these incidents and will let you know that something has happened that you can then address. So very much what I wanted to show with this. So let me hand it on back over here to Don and let him take it.
Yeah, thanks, David. So looking at the poll questions, it looks like the majority of the folks were more concerned about compliance and security, and so it's very fortuitous that you showed them that the compliance and security. And you can do a lot of tweaking within all those modules that you see there. Those are the catalogs, as David said. You can actually go in there and adjust those as needed. So, for instance, if you want to check to make sure only certain ports are open, or et cetera, that's a very powerful tool to do that. And those can be as much as every 15 minutes. That could send out either a ticket through your ticketing system or through an email, or however you like to ingest that data. So, obviously we don't, we have an hour webinar today, so we don't have a huge amount of time to go super deep into that. However, if you guys want to go much deeper with us, just engage with us, which brings me to the next thing is, what's the next step? So what does all this cost you, right? Is probably what you're thinking. And the answer is, if you jump on our CSP, it costs you nothing. As a matter of fact, if you're on pay-as-you-go, we can even save you over what you're paying today on your pay-as-you-go by at least 3%. So that means you don't even have to do anything. You get, the Flexera product itself as a bonus. And on top of that, we'll go in and we'll help you set up, Flexera. As a matter of fact, if we need to do a pay-as-you-go, move over to our CSP program, we'll come in at no cost to you and look at your environment. David has a whole team of folks that just go in there and take a look at it and gives us a complete checklist of what we need to do to make it easy to move that over to the CSP at no cost to you. And then we'll move you over to our CSP at no cost to you as well. So guaranteed savings of at least 3% on top of what you're going to save with Flexera once it's set up, which is potentially at least 30%. So you can see a substantial bit of savings there. We can go in and set up policies for you around your security, and we'll work with you with analysts to look at what you actually need as far as that's concerned, to make sure that you're completely secure. And again, what's the, how long does it take? It depends on the size of your environment. Obviously, if you're Costco, it's going to take weeks. If if you've got a handful of VMs, it's going to take a few hours, right? But generally, what do we see? It's usually about a 4-hour engagement, and that includes the engagement call, the kickoff call, and then there's probably a few hours in the background that we do some work on your end, and then we deliver. And then we will basically work with your team to onboard your cloud to CSP. We can give you a lot more information about CSP. Just simply talk to your your sales folks, and they'll be happy to work with you on that, setting up an appointment with us to discuss it further, and understand all the ins and outs of the CSP program. Maybe go in even deeper with Flexera as far as if you don't feel like you've gotten enough information out of this webinar, or just what the CSP program entails and how it works. That being the case, let's go ahead and jump into the questions portion of this webinar. And Scott, is there some questions from the audience?
Yeah. Thank you, Don and David. You shared some great insights and solutions with our audience today. Let's jump right in. So the first question we got was, is there a way for me to see all of my costs from all of my cloud providers in one place? And do you support any providers outside of the big three, Microsoft, AWS, and Google?
Don, would you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So, one of the reasons that we like Flexera so much is their ability to see costs across the board. So, like Scott said, the big three obviously are there, but we have a feature called Common Bill Ingestion. And today we're working with many other clouds. And basically, it's a simple concept. If the cloud has a way for us to get their billing data, we can bring it into the Flexera tool. And we're working with VMware, Alley, Google, or Oracle, a number of different clouds, bringing those costs in one place. Then we can view those costs on the dashboard system in aggregate or separately. We can break them up and view them one at a time or view them together. And in fact, when we do things like tagging and creating custom dimensions that we can report on, we can then bring costs across all of those. And so if you do have a department that, for example, might have some resources in AWS and some in Azure, we can then bring those and report to them in their billing center on just those costs across any of those clouds. Don, you have anything to add on that?
No, that's pretty good. The only thing I would add to that is, also, this could be reported to you in several different ways, and not just the dashboard. But you could get a report via email if you prefer. So yes, not only can you see them all in one place, but it doesn't have to be just one place. It could be the dashboard plus email, if you prefer.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. The next question, does the cost shown consider the EDPs or discounts that we put in place with cloud providers?
Yes, it does. So let's say, you go to our CSP, and you're saving a percentage that will be reflected in your tool. So you're not going to see just the market price. You will see what the actual bill is you're going to be paying at the end of the month, which is helpful because, like I said, if you're trying to determine, say your budget is 2,000 and you start to see some costs go up, you're not looking at some kind of weird market price where you've got to go in and calculate down to what you're actually paying. This shows you the actual cost through us.
Nice. Another one says, can I create custom views so everyone in the company sees our costs the same way? Can I limit users so they can only see what costs they're responsible for?
So, I'll take that one too if you want, Don. The Flexera tool, those dashboards, there's a number of built-in dashboards that Flexera has provided, and many people find that those work well enough that they have put in what's needed. Flexera has been doing this longer than pretty much anybody else out there, and they're pretty much the market leader. That's why we chose them originally. But they've given us the ability to create custom dashboards. And as you would expect from any tool of this caliber, it's a real simple process to do it. It's a matter of choosing a layout and dragging and dropping widgets and giving it a few parameters so that it knows what you want it to display. And then you have that custom dashboard. Now that dashboard can then be private just for you. It might be your own private one that you want to see, or you can share it to your organization and have everybody see the same. But there is another side of this. We may have costs that we don't want to share with one department or another, maybe not for security reasons, but there's just no reason. And within the billing centers, because we have that ability to create billing centers and sub-billing centers and sub-billing centers and all that good stuff, we can then say that one individual can only see a subset, that one billing center or a child billing center, and only the data in that. Perhaps in the marketing department, the web developers can only see their costs associated to what they're doing, and then they can focus on those costs.
Great. Thanks, David. Is there a way to see how well I'm using my resources and then inform team owners where they can reduce costs? Are they just recommendations, or can I actually have people make changes from them?
Go ahead, Don.
Okay. I'm sorry. So yeah, you can set up policies for that. I think that's what you're alluding to. Can you take that one, David? Actually.
Yeah. So within the Optima component, that is your optimization and visualization. That's where we're going to see the call. So we don't actually make changes in that particular component of it. But in the governance component is where we can actually make changes. And pretty much any policy in governance. I really didn't do a good job going deep into them, but pretty much any of them, other than maybe a report, has some ability to affect those resources. It can delete those volumes. It can move machines. We have the ability to turn machines on and off from within the governance system. So we definitely can make those changes in an automated fashion.
One quick thing to add, this is Alan from Flexera. One quick thing to add is that there is the capability too for that automated remediation to even have a workflow where you can have an approval for some of those. So you can deploy those policies in such a way that it will recommend what needs to happen, and then those who have the right access will have the ability to approve those changes or deny those changes after reviewing what comes out of from the recommendation on that policy.
All right, that's great. Thanks, Alan. One more question we have. Can I customize policies? Do I have to use out-of-the-box policies as you've defined them within the platform? Can I use policies against third-party services or use information from third-party services to make those recommendations?
Yeah. I mean, the really can. Like I know it was a really quick, demonstration, but during the governance portion of it, we saw where, David was able to go in and change his, the minimum of 30, for instance. And so when the user tries to go in there and put the policy in and put 29, it wouldn't allow them to do so. So yes, you can absolutely, and it is very simple to use, very easy to read, kind of a non-program, if you will, of going in there and, and just being able to adjust your policies as needed, as well as you can customize to your heart's content. If you do know a bit of coding and you're comfortable going in there, you can really go to your heart's content as far as customizing those policies, if you will.
And, I'd like to point out one thing that Flexera does really well. I demo this product several times every week, and I always point out when I'm demoing it how great the documentation is. And when it's a group of IT folks, they always snicker at me because you generally know how bad documentation is from IT, from software. But Flexera's done an incredible job with this, not just on how to use it in Optima, but the depth. And I just showed the front page of the developer guide, but the developer guide goes into great detail, including samples and samples and explanations on how to do it. And we do have obviously Flexera behind us. They're not going to walk away. They're back there with us to help. So there is a lot you can do with this. And really, we've just scratched the surface, even within what policies that Flexera has provided for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Don, David, and Alan. I appreciate your time. That's all we have time for right now. But if we didn't get to your question, we'll reach out to you in the next 24 hours to give you an answer. In the meantime, you can check out our website for more information about our Quick Strike assessment, the link in the bottom right-hand corner here. Thank you again for joining us today. We hope you found the webinar insightful and helpful, and we look forward to reconnecting with everybody soon.
Thanks, Scott.